Hello and welcome to the Bend Like Bamboo Resilience Show. To bend like bamboo is to master change with flexibility. And on the show, I get to learn from and interview very special guests all about resilience and how to master it in our minds, in our bodies, and in our lives. And today I'm interviewing Mark Truelson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Amanda. I'm really looking forward to this. I've noticed over the last few weeks you've had some amazing guests, so I'm a bit overawed, but I think we'll give it a good crack.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for your time today. I know what you specialize in, and I know this is going to be one of the most juiciest interviews yet. So let's dive in. Please let me introduce you properly. So Mark Truelson is not your everyday speaker. He leads from the heart and brings love and emotion to the normally sterile world of corporate Australia. To Mark, there's nothing more tragic than when a human questions his or her worth. He provides the tools to employees that can ignite the passion and overcome dormancy in the workplace, the very dormancy that fuels doubt, dismay, and even personal crisis. These tools aren't just business savvy, they're personally transformative. And transformative companies and ideas upend markets by doing something truly different. They see a need and create something for a market which may not yet exist. And after working with some of the world's best companies, Mark discovered that the framework for transformation can also be applied to for individuals. So I can't wait to talk about this, Mark.
Thank you. It's I think what's been lost with the quest of big corporates trying to go for efficiency and effectiveness is that true magic comes from igniting the passions from the humans that work within. So I think there's a real opportunity not only for companies to grow, but for a focus on humans, being the employees, for them to grow as well.
Definitely. How long have you been a speaker for? When did that start?
Well, I finished probably a 20-year corporate stint about 9 years ago. And ever since then, I've just absolutely loved doing what I was doing at companies such as where I was working at CUB, just doing it with a load of companies, not only here, but abroad. So mainly focusing on creativity and innovation and storytelling. So it's been a great ride so far.
That would be seriously such a fun job.
Well, it makes getting up in the morning very enjoyable. So yes, definitely.
Yeah, and a great way to help people too.
Well, it's good seeing people sort of come alive, because often corporates can stifle that creativity, and I think it's one of those things. When you have a good play with kids, and you can see the magic that comes through their eyes, and I think once you get to school, that sort of gets beaten out of them, and especially when you get into corporate, you're basically told you're not creative. And I think every one of us is creative. We've just got to find the ways and the tools to ignite that sort of imagination and spirit. So yes, it's definitely a buzz when I see that transform before your eyes.
So why do you think storytelling is so important?
Well, it's something that truly resonates. It's the because I think we're bombarded by so much information and facts, and I think that sort of just blows over you. But when you hear a story, you can connect to something that's happened to you in the past, and it really gives you meaning, and it gives you a way forward in terms of inspiration and a way forward to come up with great solutions. So storytelling for me always just cuts through the clutter.
And why transformation?
Well, I think I look at the best times in my corporate career, and there have been the times where we've really, broken down the barriers or did things that were considered impossible. And I think the more and more you look at the magic of human beings, that's where you see when true transformation comes from. It's sort of like the good old caterpillar that sort of spends a time in the mess of it all, in the cocoon, and then suddenly just flourishes into a butterfly. And I think we all as humans go through that period where we're going down one path and we get stuck in the mess, and then suddenly a moment transpires and we can all sort of transform like a butterfly. And when that happens, that's where the true fulfillment and meaning comes from.
Do you think we go through that multiple times in our lives?
Oh, definitely, and hopefully it happens all the time. But I think it's very easy to get stuck into doing the mundane, or getting stuck to what society feels is your rightful place. And I think we've got to just constantly find a way to break through all that mess.
Yeah, it's a very lonely path sometimes, and to create a new path, it's like walking down a path unpaved, which requires courage and determination and self-belief, because it usually is against the status quo, right?
Yeah, and I think, it's become in vogue. And one thing I'd like to say is that a lot of people talk about self-love. And whilst I believe in self-love, I see self-love being more than just getting, a manicure or a massage, or spending time just, doing something indulgent. I think self-love is doing the work and getting right in and doing the hard work, which can take time. And to me, that tough love on yourself is what helps you transform, not necessarily the indulgent parts of the wonderful parts that we can spend, 45 minutes getting a nice deep tissue massage.
Yeah, love it. All right, let's dive in. What does resilience mean to you?
Wow, it's a big question, because I think gratefully we've changed our view on resilience. I think resilience used to be this real sort of masculine word that sort of encapsulated someone who was really super tough, who could stand up and fight. And like Rocky Balboa says, it's not how you hit, it's how you get hit and keep moving forward. And I think there is that beautiful part about getting hit or having an obstacle and moving forward. But I don't think you have to be tough and masculine to do that. I think if I think about resilience, to me, it's about enduring. It's about being in for the long haul. It's about doing that work. And I think all of us can aspire to be resilient if that's the case. If it means you're the toughest person on the planet, then most of us will probably shield away from it. And I think that endurance part says to me that resilience can be learned. It's not something that you're innately born with. And to be learned, I think there's a natural process that can help you through and become more resilient. And being in marketing, I always like to think of an acronym or a snappy sort of title. And for me, resilience is about control, alt, delete.
I love
So,
it.
so if you think about your computer, when things are tough and things are sort of getting, you're on your computer and everything seems too hard, you press Control Alt Delete, you can sort of start again. And
Reset.
and I feel that's the same way with us. And so if you think about it as a process, to me, control's about resetting, as you just said, your mindset. So something major has happened to you, an obstacle. You've got to get your mindset in a space where it's willing to be open for growth. And I think that's a really important part, because people often just go straight to the solution and say, okay, I'm feeling down, so therefore I need to do this. And I feel there's a journey before you get to that stage. And to me, the control bit is getting your mindset right. And people like Carol Dweck has sort of modernized mindset, and I think we're becoming more aware of the power of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And I think once you get to a growth mindset, you are in a position to be more motivated for the challenge ahead, because you're actually seeing it through the right lens. You're seeing it from an optimistic point of view that something can be changed. And I think once you get the right motivation, it's what then gives you meaning. You can start thinking, hang on, this isn't impossible. This is a situation where I can overcome, because what this opportunity means to me now is something that I can transform or improve upon. So for me, that's the control part. The alt part is sort of seeking the right sort of alternatives. And because often, as I said, people jump to the first solution they come to and they run it, a bull at a gate. But to me, it's taking stock and thinking, okay, now that I've got meaning, now that my mindset and motivation's right, what are some alternatives that may be totally different to where I've been? And I think to find the alternatives, you need to be discovery driven. What succeeded before may not what succeeds in the future. There may just be an opportunity that you could go down that you may not have even thought about, but because you're in a different mindset, because you've got a different meaning, there's an opportunity to look at opportunities or discoveries in a very different way. And I think once you're discovery driven, it's also a good way to then combine and play to your distinctive strengths. It's one thing being discovery driven, but there's some clues and hints along your journey, along the decades of your life on the planet, that sort of says, there are some things I'm good at. And some people, they're really humble and think that nothing that they do is good. But, maybe speak to a friend or speak to some work colleagues and say, what is it what are the traits that I put forward to the world that actually you think are a strength? And there might be things that, that you take great passion in. And I think once you play your sort of distinctive strengths, you then go, okay, with these alternatives, there are some that may be a stretch, but equally there's some that you may have to step back to grow. You might say, okay, I'm a general manager, but to get to where I want to get to, I may have to come back. I now have to, and that could then catapult you into an amazing path moving forward. And I think the last part, once you've controlled the mindset, motivation, meaning, you've got alternatives, then what's really important, I think, which gets overlooked and neglected, is the delete. So what are the things that that aren't serving you or haven't served you that you now need to get rid of? Because if you carry that baggage forward on that transformational path, or that resilience that you need to show, if you don't get rid of the things that are holding you back, then there's going to be too much for your mind to occupy, too much that is going to weigh you down. And then momentum begets momentum. And if you can't get those first steps quickly, then most of the time that's when we give up. So resilience to me is not just a snappy little one word or one phrase. And I really love the work that, you know, the Resilience Project has done, a lot of the work that you've shown, not through, you know, not just your personal example, but all the great work you're doing with resilience and bringing meaning to that. And I think what's important with that is that it becomes a lot more human, the word resilience. It's not this thing that none of us can aspire for. It's something that we can all achieve, we can all learn to be more capable with.
Yes, I love that. Wow. Control, Alt, Delete. Easy to remember, and really, what a great acronym.
Thank you. Well, you know, I've been in marketing for nearly 30 years, so I think that's the only thing marketers really get taught to do, is come up with snappy acronyms.
That's awesome. So I would love it if you would share something that you've been through in your life, something that you had to overcome.
Yeah, I think, you know, if you'd asked me this question probably 10 years ago, I'd say, look, I've had the perfect life, so there's not really anything I've had to overcome. But, you know, definitely in the last 10 years, after I hit my sort of 40th birthday, you know, there's been a number of things, but in particular, I look back to probably 2014 for most of that, and then definitely 2015. But 2014, I went through a mental derailment. And I think it's quite fascinating because often people don't want to talk about it. They sort of say, oh, I've got mental health. But to me, mental health is something you aspire for. It's not something that you went through. What you went through is a mental derailment or a mental illness. And when you do the work, you come up with mental health. So I look back at 2014 and, you know, I probably started the year, I did some great things. I did a dream consulting job where it was about building creative confidence with BlackRock, who's one of the biggest financial institutions in the world, which took me to 5 different countries, and I worked with a couple thousand people in terms of how to build their creative confidence. So for most of that, I was on a high, but I remember thinking there were elements of that trip that I was getting stressed or anxious about that I'd never experienced before. And, you know, thinking about getting visas. And I remember my mum hassling me about, you have to get a visa to India. And I said, no, I don't have to. And then I had to, and that really consumed me. And
the details started to get to you.
The details started to really gnaw at me, which, you know, before it hadn't. And I then, you know, came back from that and I started feeling a bit different. I remember doing a strategy workshop for one of the big corporates here in Australia, and I had the sense that the room was just closing in on me. And I remember them all looking at me, and paranoia started happening where I felt everybody in the room was laughing at me. And you know, I looked over at the window and I thought, how easy would it be for me just to run through that window, because I was feeling crippled and I felt that everyone wasn't taking me seriously, and I felt like I should just run out the room and never come back. But you know, somehow I just kept at the workshop, and I remember sheepishly going up to the director at the end and, you know, fully expecting to get barreled and saying it was, but she just looked at me and said, Mark, that was incredible. It was the best workshop we've ever had. And I started thinking, why is my mind playing tricks on me? Why is it got this real negative lens on life? You know, why can't I see what actually is happening? And it sort of just became worse and worse for me. I remember just simple tasks like going shopping. You know, I could spend literally half an hour in the toothpaste aisle trying to debate whether the 459 toothpaste was better than the 429 toothpaste. And I was really consumed by the difficulty in making that choice. And I remember having to ask the poor kid, you know, in the aisle to sort of help me, who was packing shelves, to help me which brand was best. And you know, I had my daughter's 21st, where, you know, I'm a speaker, people pay me to speak, and yet for 2 weeks I couldn't sleep because of the fear of wanting to do her speech at her 21st. And we were living in a a beautiful, 4-bedroom sort of. I'm a dad with, solo dad with 3 kids, and the 4 of us were living in this. We had 4 levels in this townhouse, and basically I got to the stage where I'd spend my whole day. I'd start in my bedroom, and the anxiety would get so much that I'd have to then go down the 4 flights of stairs down to what we called the dungeon, where I had a couch, and I'd lay there and try to get the pain to go away. And then when the anxiety came too much, I would have to walk up to my bed, and I was sort of going doing that walk the whole time. And the thought of doing that in front of my kids was just so embarrassing for me. And it finally hit a stage where it was my son's, I think, 8th birthday, and he asked me to umpire his, for his party, can I umpire his footy match? And I couldn't make any decisions, and I was just making some shockers. And I remember my son just looking at me saying, "Dad, you are the worst umpire ever." And I could see my mum just getting so upset, because she could see that I was just, a big, strong son who was used to have all the confidence in the world had just become this shell of himself. And it was at that moment that, my mum then alerted, my brother, and they sort of staged the intervention for me. So, from someone who used to be super confident, I sort of thought, wow, this is really taken a hold of me. And, I basically had to sort of stay out of work for about 18 months. So, yeah.
Sounds like you were feeling really capped and just overwhelmed. Was there something that happened leading up to when that first happened? Was there something going on in your life that made you feel that led up to that? Looking back now, do you understand why this happened?
Oh, look, it's a fascinating question, and I have spent a lot of time speaking to some professionals about this, and I advise anybody who goes through that to not wait as long as I did. There were signals along the way. There were signs I should have picked up. Speaking with the professionals, there wasn't anything big and significant. There was just lots of things that had happened at the same time, and it was sort of like a perfect storm where, just like a computer, when it's got too much information, it just crashes. I literally just had too much that I'd taken on. I'd taken on too many challenges, try to rescue too many people. And at that stage, I wasn't rescuing myself, and it basically just all, exploded.
You were so much output and not enough self-care.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So tell me, what was your lowest point when you were going through that? What was the hardest bit? And talk me through that bit.
Well, definitely it was extreme shame, and it's the thing I still battle with to this day, is that, I'd always been a successful person. I felt like, my life was great. I had a perfect family. I was married with 3 kids, and I think the thought of that disappearing, and, I had the responsibility of the 3 kids, and that's sort of all I could do for those sort of 18 months. I couldn't really work, but, I just had to take control. But I kept feeling responsible that maybe their life wasn't going to turn out as well as I thought it could be or should be. And also them seeing me not be the person who I wanted to be and who to represent. And, like I said, the example, that they would see me literally walk up and down those 4 flights of stairs 50 times a day. And, they'd sort of ask, "Dad, what are you doing? What's wrong?" And so it's just that shame of not being able to portray yourself with the confidence or the strength that you think you should be able to do in front of your kids. But so that shame still stays with me. But what's amazed me is just how resilient, kids are, that they can go through that and they can offer you that strength, and they don't give you any judgment as to, they just see the love and support that you give them, and that's what they want.
We judge ourselves so much, don't we?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And, we're definitely our own harshest critic. And that's the hardest part when you go through a mental derailment, is that, you've got that little voice inside of your head saying you're not good enough, or no one's going to want to employ you anymore, or no one's going to want you to run a workshop or do a speech, or, your kids are thinking you're useless, or, if you're looking for a partner, that they're not going to, see the good things in you.
So it sounds like you were going through so much change. And was that around the same time that you first started to decide to break out on your own and really do your own workshops? And because you used to be in the corporate market before that full time.
I'd left corporate with all these, grandiose ideas, and I think, part of that, I was going to do it with another guy who I love dearly, and, he stayed in corporate, and so I sort of probably wasted a bit of time. Then I got into it, and it was all fantastic, but then, I had a marriage separation that didn't do well, and I had to look after the kids, and
so much going on.
So it was quite blurry, and it sort of just all fell apart at that time.
Yeah. So sometimes, every day we go through change, but sometimes life brings bigger change. And sometimes it feels like it's all happening at once. And it can really blow our circuits.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And
I feel you.
and I think it's very, it's sort of fascinating to me that if your mind can be that negative, the thing that really sort of gets me through is that if it can be that negative, it could also flip to be that positive. And I
Yeah.
think I was astounded just how negative my mind had become, and how crippling it came, in terms of my whole makeup. So I'd
Yeah.
spent the first 40 years of my life, living quite a blissful life, had an amazing mum who showed me the way and had great friends, and the thought that I could just, inside become so paranoid and have hallucinations, and feel that the world was all on top of me. It just showed if it can flip that way, it can also flip the other way. And ever since then, that's sort of been the burning sort of passion I've had to sort of help people, navigate that path.
So what do you make sure you do now daily to make sure you don't go back to that place?
Yeah, look, I've got the theory that I could tell you. Whether I follow it up in practice is the challenging piece. Is like, that's why I said that to me, self love is the work. And I think we get it when it comes to, why we get a personal trainer. I don't think we get it when it comes to all the work you need to do. Whether that be meditation or journaling, or
Seeing
asking yourselves,
counselor, working
all that.
through.
You know,
Yeah.
I joked about it with with one of my best buddies, and we sort of said, "Wow, to live this sort of life that we know we should, it literally takes 2, 3, 4 hours a day to sort of to do it correctly and properly." So
Yeah.
that's why I always laugh when I see influencers on Instagram talk about self love, and they're pampering themselves. For me, self love is
The work.
committing to doing that work and doing it daily. So, and it's something that you'll do for the rest of your life.
Do you think the work is then being really true to yourself and looking at yourself, warts and all? Is that what you mean when you say it's more doing the work, that's self-love, like really taking a look at yourself, checking in with your thoughts, what's going on in internal dialogue, questioning it, the shame that comes up or the guilt, like questioning it. Is it true? Should I, can I let this go? Is that what you mean when you say the work?
Yeah, that, but also really truly understanding who you are and what you stand for, and not get down on yourself. That actually see the opportunity that lays within, and not get consumed by the doubt or get riddled by the thoughts that enter your head. But establish, deep down, what does your soul truly represent? What does it want to give to the world? And I think that takes time. I don't think you can go and watch a Simon Sinek, TED video that says, find your purpose and you get your purpose straight away. It's something that evolves with every day that you have on the planet.
Yeah, I think living your true authentic self requires, the ability to let go of ego, what other people expect from you, what you expect from yourself, the ability to soften and to just walk your own path and really let go of what people think, all these ego things that can really build up these expectations of what we should be doing versus what we really want to be doing. And then we entertain scenarios in our heads of what, our kids or our friends might be thinking of us when maybe it's just an assumption.
Yeah, totally, and false, and
Yeah.
something that sort of led you down, and you sort of think, well, look at the decisions you've made that may not have been the wise or right decisions, and why did I make those decisions? And if I had that time again, how would I change that outcome or outlook?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
So what was your turning point? How did you turn it all around?
well, I think the big turning point for me is because I kept it away from everyone for so long. I tried to take on the challenge all by myself. I could sense that things were going wrong, but I didn't have the courage to speak out. And I think, going back to my mum seeing me at my son's football, umpiring the football, and she told my brother, and he had an intervention, and he had the courage. He's a beautiful soul, my brother, and he's this guy who's probably always looked up to me as the big brother. And there was a moment where he stepped up, and I'll always be forever grateful. He banded all my friends together, and as a collective, they sort of took on the responsibility to get me out of the rut. That one of my great friends, Dave, his task was to come over to my house at 6 o'clock in the morning to get me out of bed, to have breakfast, to talk to me, sort of get my mind thinking well. going through a checklist, to make sure that my life wasn't as miserable as I thought. And, I had another mate, who was in New York, and, he spoke to me, and I said, he said he wants to come and see me. And I said, look, I'm basically a crippled in bed. I don't even know if I can get out of bed sometimes. And he said, no, I'm going to fly over. So he flew over straight away from New York. He had one of the most successful advertising roles in Manhattan, but he took a week out without pay, and he came and he just sat with me, and he said, look, as long as I can sit next to you in your bed and we can just talk. I had other people like, Rich and Kate, and, they would make sure that, because I was looking after my kids, that, they would, drop in food and doing all those sorts of things. So I was really humbled by that, because I think, and I remember thinking, feeling so guilty, but they sort of said to me, hey, you've been there for us for 40 years. You've always helped us throughout, we've never helped you. And it just sort of dawned on me, just, you're not here by yourself, that there are other people here who can lift you up.
And to let people in and let people do that, it's very nurturing for both involved, both parties, for you and also for them. And it's amazing the love and the connection that can be shown when you're in real time of need, what people will do. It's actually beautiful, like the people that step up for you.
Yeah, and when my mate Dave would come over most mornings at 6, he again, he runs a very successful business, and, as busy as a man can be. And he's someone who dedicates a couple hours of self-love and self-care. And, for him to overlay another hour that he'd support me, it sort of just said, look, my life is worth living. My life will have some purpose. And, to see the energy that they were coming with me to help sort of just gave me some energy to overcome.
Beautiful. So what's the biggest thing you learned through all that?
It's you don't know what you've learned until you experience that same sort of situation again. And not that I went to anywhere near those depths, but definitely during COVID, I really started to wobble. And I think having gone through that, derailment before gave me strength to say, hey, you've been there before, you've done it, you've got through it, this time will pass, just because there was that time, sort of April, May, where I thought, wow, a lot of the big corporates were saying to me, you're not going to be able to work. We're not probably going to be able to do face-to-face workshops or speaking until 2021 at an earliest. And I'd sort of gone through a situation where, I got myself in a lot of debt because I hadn't worked when I had the mental derailment. I had probably the best year or two of my consulting life where I got myself back on track. And then the negative thoughts started coming back, and the shame and the guilt and the, are you going to be good enough? And I remember, because I've gone through it, I just applied the lens of, control, alt, delete. And, from a control point of view, we talk about mindset, and, someone who I really love is Byron Katie. And if you go on a website, she goes through like the 4 questions you've got to ask yourself. And the first 2 questions to me are fascinating. Is the first question, is it true? And what I love about that is because, negativity can really affect you. And is it true sort of says, or the thoughts that are entering your mind, are they true? And the second question is it really true? So, that first lens you can get overcome. But when you ask that, is it really true? That's when I said, no, it's not true, because I've actually gone through worse myself. I got through it. I got back. I was in a much stronger place than I was before. So yes, this time will pass. And then I started, from a motivation, I started getting excited. And from a meaning point of view, I said, hey, maybe my life has come to this this juncture where it starts getting clearer. And the alt part of the control, alt, delete was, okay, if you can't get consulting done, till 2021, what can you do? And, I look back at probably the best time of my life was, when I was, running innovation at CUB and coming up with beer. So I sort of said to a couple of guys, hey, this is the time now we can come up with a beer. And, this was sort of March, April. And, what we went through, we're getting it manufactured in Germany. We're getting it stocked in Dan Murphy and BWS. And that would never have come if I hadn't have gone through what I went through before. And the delete part is, okay, now that you're coming up and introducing this beer to the marketplace, what does this mean for you consulting-wise going forward? And for me, I used to do lots of things that I didn't really truly enjoy, but I always loved transformation or disruption. And to me, it's like, come up with a beer, but also connect it to a story of transformation and focus on that moving forward. And it's that process of, the control your mindset to make it work, come up with an alternative story that really excites you, and then delete things out of your life. I think if I hadn't gone through the mental derailment, it wouldn't have got to a stage where I could be more resilient and more excited about the future moving forward.
Yeah, totally agree. Amazing. So do you have some tips out there if someone's listening, they're going through a similar scenario in their lives, they're really feeling shame, or they might be having their own, mental derailment, or they feel just totally overwhelmed? What are some tips that you'd like to share of what people can just do today?
Yeah, I think because one thing I learned about mental derailment is we often talk about fear, flight or fight. I think there's something even more dangerous than flight or fight. I call it freeze. So I think most of us, I think if you go through flight or fight, people can associate you with that. They can tell that you've got some fear, or they can tell that you're wanting to do something different. It's obvious. But I think for most of us, we get caught in a rut. Now, I certainly did. I became very numb to what was happening around me. And one thing I would love to be able to help people with is to help them move through numbness, because I think numbness to me is a lot more crippling. To be in a numb zone is a lot more crippling than being in a fear zone or a growth zone. Definitely being in a growth zone is what you aspire for. And so it got me really into thinking about the world of numbness and what are the masks of numbness that we put on ourselves, and they're a number. So it's not, my numbness was being able to, connect with other people, but other people have numbness in terms of being a more intimate partner, or they have numbness that they've lost their courage, or numbness that they don't want to get out of bed and explore the world. So to me, numbness became this consuming thought of how can you help people through it. And one of the interesting areas that I looked at was, if you think about rock climbers, they've got one of the most fearing jobs on the planet. At any moment, they could lose footing, or there could be a snake that could bite them, or anything. The thing that they fear the most is what is called carpal tunnel syndrome, or CTS. And carpal tunnel syndrome is the point where they know that their fingers have become so numb that death is going to happen. So they're always looking for signs of how to avoid CTS. And so to your question about tips, to me, it's about understanding what are the CTS that come in your life. When is it that you either care less, being the C? When is it that you're talking less to people? Or when is it that you're seeing less? Because there, to me, are the signals. They're your carpal tunnel syndrome or your CTS. It's when you're caring less. So that's when you're going really insular and you're not really checking in with that person. It's when you're talking less, is that you're not picking up the phone or going to visit your friends, and suddenly you can think, well, I haven't really seen anyone for 7 months, which is probably something we've gone through with COVID. Or seeing less because, some of your good friends can sort of say, hey, I don't think you're coping well. I don't think you're doing well, or you become a bit narcissistic, or you've become a bit abrupt. You're not seeing those patterns. So for me, the tips are you've got to then care more. You've got to really get yourself out there with your family, your friends in the community. You've got to start making sure that you're just not in your bedroom, worrying. You're talking to people. And once you start talking to your friends, you realise the problems that you're facing aren't as big as what you thought they were. But it's also being self-aware and seeing more. And I think if you can care more, talk more, see more, then it's going to help you come, not only that numbness, but make you more resilient to any challenges or obstacles you have moving forward.
Yeah, beautiful. They're great tips there, Mark. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time today. Honestly, there's just so much juicy content there, and I'm a huge fan of your work, and you've helped me so much in my career as well. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for just being you. I think you're super cool.
Thank you very much, and thank you for giving people the opportunity to do this, because I think it's really important that people understand that resilience isn't just a thing for the tough-minded. It's for all of us, and it's something that we can learn. But also, you're talking to so many cool, interesting people that it's only going to benefit society moving forward. So thank you for your courage, and also your personal example that you've given, overcoming everything you've come. Because
thank you.
It's those moments that inspire us. So
I appreciate
thank you very
that.
much.
Thank you so much. And everybody, no matter what you are going through, you can overcome it and discover what you are made of. So thanks again, Mark.
Welcome.
All right. See you guys next week.
Enjoy.